Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Thursday. It's Daryl here. It's not so bright and early anymore. It's 5 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the N word, how things were when I was growing up and how things are now, and how I think, I don't know how else to say this, but how I think it confuses the situation. Before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit more, once again, about the Montgomery riverboat brawl. There's been two more people arrested, and I believe they made bail and been released. Alan Todd, 23 years old. I'll probably use these guys' pictures on my thumbnail so you can see their wonderful faces. Alan Todd, 23 years old, and Zachary Shipman, 25 years old. I still don't see the name Chase Shipman. It's kind of unclear. Some articles say that two more warrants are outstanding. There's two people still at large. Yesterday it said one person was already in custody, and then the other three were supposed to turn themselves in. And then these two turned themselves in, and now I read the article saying that there's two more outstanding warrants. So to be honest, I don't know who's already gone in, made bail, and who has. There's at least one person that hasn't come in and turned themselves in yet. At least one, if not two. It's hard to make sense of all this, but that's where it's at today. More than that, I came across an article about Big Brother. Now, I used to watch this show. I used to love this show. I still do, but I get up so damn early to make this video for you guys. I think Big Brother, it used to be on at 8. It's on 3 times a week. And it was on at 8 and 9 one night. I think when it was live, it came on at 9 p.m. And I get up here to do these videos. I was up before 2 a.m. this morning, so it gets hard for me to do that. So I haven't watched it recently. I used to really enjoy watching the show. I would always gravitate. I'd always root for the oldest guy in the house. This show's been around for 25 years. If you don't know, it's a reality show. 25 people go into this house and they stay in there. They're isolated. They have all the food, and they go through these tests to eliminate people to get extra things. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. One of the house guests, this white guy, Luke Valentine, 25 years old, he was having a conversation with 3 other people, Jared, Corey, and Hizam. Jared happens to be black. Now, this comes into play because Luke was talking about, it's hard to make out what he said. The clip will be down below so you can watch it for yourselves. And they caught this on, well, everything's being filmed all the time. So everything everybody says for the whole time they're in there is recorded. And he said something about, I went into the effing cheese room. Now they have rooms with different themes. I don't know. I see there in the video there's a bed that looks like a slice of cheese. So anyway, he goes, we went into the effing cheese room, and then he pauses and he goes, then he says N-word. And then he realizes he said it, and then he tries to replace it with, dude. So as soon as I saw this, I started asking myself, well, what context did he say this in? Was he calling somebody? Was he going, you N-word? He's saying it like that, or was he using it in this context? Part of the, I guess I call it the vernacular of hip hop culture. Part of the vernacular of hip hop culture. Just throwing it in there, like you replacing the word dude with that word. And then I started asking myself, does it really make any difference? Does it make any difference how he used it? I guess the producers of this show had this rule. I have ongoing rule that there's zero tolerance for this kind of thing, for racial attacks, racial language like that. And there's another video of a woman, Caitlin, also saying this word, and I think she got kicked off too. I think this was in another season. And I started thinking about how I grew up. I was born in '66, and through most of up until high school, that word was just, nobody used it. It was just, I never heard it. If black people used it, I didn't know. It wasn't part of anybody's vernacular at that time. And hip hop was just starting. In my world, it was just starting to become popular. I remember Run DMC and a couple other groups just coming out like in the mid 80s, early 80s, and it wasn't part of our language. And now it's become part of, like I said, the vernacular of hip hop culture. And I think that just I don't want. It makes it harder. It makes it harder, I think, for younger people now. Yeah, it was easier when that word just wasn't used. It's a derogatory word. I was trying to think of one other word that I just don't use that's derogatory, that I find a word appalling, that I just don't use it. And the one that came to mind was the C word, that describes a part of a woman's anatomy. I've always known that women just find out it's an ugly word, and women find it most women find it particularly offensive, and that's just one word I do not say. And it came to mind one time when I believe I was 10 or 11 years old. My father had just passed away, and I had a black teacher in, I think this was in 5th or 6th grade, and he called me in one day, and the school I was in was 3 stories high, and he called me in and a couple other students in, and he apparently saw somebody was seen throwing their sneakers out of the window during like lunchtime when the schoolrooms were empty. And he accused me. He told me, somebody saw me throw my sneakers out the window. And, he showed me the sneakers, and they weren't my sneakers. And I didn't throw them out the window. And I really didn't have anything to do with it. And I told him that. I said, those aren't even my sneakers. I've never seen those sneakers before. I to this day, I still don't know why, if somebody else said I did it or whatever. But I really had nothing to do with it. And I felt extremely angry. That I was getting. I think I had to stay in from recesses for like a week. I think it was. I think that's what it was back then. It wasn't. It wasn't. There was no in-school suspension when I was 10 or 11 years old. I don't think. And I was very angry. And I remember coming home and telling my mother. And she, she believed me. And as I think I turned and walked away from her, and I muttered under my breath. This is the only time in my life. And I don't think I even said the whole word. I think I just said the first syllable, like under my breath. And she was like, "What did you say?" And I turned around, and she wasn't just angry, but there was just this look of disappointment, just shock and disappointment. And she said, we don't say that word in this house. I felt, it wasn't, she wasn't angry, like that kind of situation. It really felt like I let her down. Like I disappointed her, really. And that's the one time I remember using it. And there was no excuse. I just remember being so angry at this person. And, I don't know, I guess part of me could almost say I'm glad it happened at that time. For some reasons, I think I'm glad it happened. Because it just made it crystal clear, at least among my family and friends, that this just wasn't acceptable language. That's just not just unacceptable language, but just the unacceptable way of looking at other people. The whole idea of the word. It was more than just the word. It's just we don't judge people by the color of their skin. Now, I'm thankful that I grew up that way. And now it's different, and I don't, as a 57-year-old man, it seems confusing. I can't help but think it must be confusing for younger people. In some cases, when a black person's talking to a black person, it's okay, supposedly, amongst some black people. I know older black people don't particularly care for the word a lot of times. And then there's the white kids that hang around or are involved in the hip-hop culture, and it's part of their music, and their friends say it. And I think I'm assuming here, because like I said, I'm a 57-year-old man, that it becomes part of their language amongst certain of their friends. They could say that, They could call each other that. I'm guessing that's how this guy used it. That he was used to using it amongst certain friends. And that's the problem with this. If you have a word that you can only use amongst certain friends, you really shouldn't be saying it. If it's an offensive word that you're hiding from other people and you're only using it in certain circumstances, there's a reason, something's wrong there. You got to ask yourself, if you're saying or doing something that you're hiding half the time, that you're ashamed of or embarrassed of, then something's wrong with that situation. Like I said, being a 57-year-old man, I have a hard time. I could never ever picture myself saying that word just out. Hey, you. It wouldn't happen. And I can't help but think this is just part of what has come along with this. It's part of like the confusing element of this. If you can't say it around everybody, you probably shouldn't say it in general. That's just my thoughts being an old man. Let me know what you think. The links will be down below. You guys have a great Thursday.